Have you ever looked at a regular census and wondered what your ancestors' day-to-day life was really like? Sure, it tells you great-grandpa was a farmer, but was he struggling with a small plot of land or running a thriving dairy operation? Was your ancestor making ends meet with a side business no one ever talked about? The regular census only tells half the story. Today, I'm revealing the non-population census schedules that can transform your family's history from a simple list of names into vivid stories of real lives. These are the records most genealogists never even think to look for. If you've spent any time digging into your family history, you've probably bumped into census records. They're those 10-year time capsules that give us a peek into our ancestors' households. Who lived where, what they did for work, and how they were connected. I've always found these records absolutely crucial in my own research, but I've also learned they don't always give up their secrets easily. Today, I'm going to walk you through these hidden treasures and show you exactly how to use them, with a real-life example from my own research that completely changed how I understood my ancestors' life. Before we dive into the special schedules, let's talk about finding your people in any census record. Start with the basics: a name, birth year, and location. But remember that census information isn't always accurate. Names got misspelled, ages were estimated, and information was also recorded exactly as it sounded to the census taker's ears. Here's what works for me when the obvious search comes up empty. Loosen up those dates. Instead of searching for someone born exactly in 1875, try giving yourself a 5-year cushion on either side. And definitely uncheck that exact match box. It's your worst enemy when dealing with census records. Try playing with spelling variations. My maiden name is Wunderlich, which I found recorded as Wonderlich, Wanderlich, and even Vandeli. Keep a running list of how your family names might have been misspelled. Those wildcard symbols are your friends too. Look for the people around them. Can't find grandma? Try searching for grandpa instead, or their kids, or even a neighbor that you found living near them in other census years. Sometimes a family member or associate can lead you to the right person that you're looking for. Try the no name trick. This sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes leaving the name field blank and filling in everything else, the county, their age, birthplace, will bring up exactly who you're looking for. You could also try focusing on distinctive first names. If your ancestor was lucky enough to be named something unusual like Hezekiah or Temperance, use that to your advantage. Unusual first names are often easier to track than common surnames like Jones or Brown. Never stop at just the search results or index. Always click through to see the actual census page. You'd be surprised how often the person that typed up the index misread what was written. Plus, when you look at the original page, you can spot mistakes where the transcriber got names or ages wrong, find extra details that didn't make it into the index. See who lived next door. Often relatives were living nearby. You could figure out tricky handwriting. When you get stuck on a letter, look for that same letter somewhere else on the page to compare them. Take time to look at all the details in the record to make sure that it's actually your ancestor. Remember, plenty of people shared the same name and sometimes even the same ages. Any John Smith in the right county might not be your John Smith. Generally, the census taken closest to a major life event, birth, or marriage, will have the most reliable information about that event. When all else fails, roll up your sleeve and browse the actual census pages. Sometimes your ancestors are there, but so badly transcribed that no search will ever find them. Look through all images page by page for the area where you believe your ancestor might have been living. Yes, it's time consuming, but I found some of my most elusive ancestors this way. Have you ever noticed how your ancestors' age jumps around from one census to the next? Or how their birthplace mysteriously changes? Before you decide you've got the wrong person, here's why census records often contradict each other. Census takers wrote down names as they heard them, not how they were spelled. This is why one census taker spelled my maiden name Wunderlich as Wunderli, because that's how it sounds with a German accent. Most people answered questions from memory. No birth certificates required. Grandma might not have been entirely forthcoming with her age either. If nobody was home, census takers would ask the neighbors instead. Think about how well your neighbors could answer these questions about you. The official census dates changed over the years, so ages weren't always measured from the same point. When modern indexers tried to read that old handwriting, They sometimes made educated guesses, and not always good ones. Now for the really exciting part. Those special census records most people completely overlook. Most genealogists only use the regular population schedules. But there's a whole world of special schedules that can tell you so much more about your ancestors' lives. I'll walk you through my favorites, and then show you a real example from my own research that completely transformed my understanding of my ancestor. If your ancestors were farmers, the agricultural schedules are absolute gems. They were created between 1850 and 1880 and show how much land your ancestors farmed, what animals they raised and how many, what crops they grew, what their equipment was worth, and in the 1880 records, who worked on the farm. In the earlier years, 1850 and 1860, these included any farmer making at least $100 from their farm annually. Later in 1870 and 1880, they covered farmers with at least 3 acres or making $500 or more per year. These records can really help you understand how your ancestors lived day to day. You can find these agricultural schedules of various places on the internet as well as Ancestry.com. Stick with me, and towards the end of this video, I will show you how valuable these records are and how they can really make your family history come alive. Did your ancestor own a shop or work in manufacturing? The manufacturing schedules can tell you what their business was called, what they made or produced, how much their business was worth, what materials they used, what kind of machinery they had, and how many people worked for them and what they paid them. These covered businesses making more than $500 worth of goods per year. Even if your ancestor was an employee rather than the owner, you might find details about where they worked if you know their employer's name. You can also find these manufacturing schedules on Ancestry. I have seen in some of these where it's not listed by the owner's name. You might need to search for the name of the business itself, or go page by page. If I know that my ancestor had a business in a specific area, I will often just go page by page to find it. If your ancestor died in the year before the census was taken, you might find them in the mortality schedules, which were created between 1850 and 1880. They list a person's name, age, and gender, when they died, what they died from, and how long they were sick. Also, what they did for a living, where they were born, and in the later years, where their parents were born. These records are especially helpful for people who died between regular census years. They might be the only official record of your ancestors' existence. You can find these mortality schedules on Ancestry.com, and FamilySearch.org also has the 1850 schedules and selected schedules from other census years for certain states. Veteran schedules. Several census years included special enumerations for veterans. In 1840, there's the Revolutionary War pensioners, which lists names and ages. 1890, Union Civil War veterans and widows, which includes rank, regiment, and enlistment dates. 1900 to 1920, military personnel on bases and vessels. And 1930, merchant seamen on vessels. The 1890 veteran schedule is particularly valuable since most of the 1890 population census was destroyed. You can find these veterans and military records on Ancestry.com and FamilySearch.org. Here are some other more specialized schedules you might find useful. Slave schedules in 1850 and 1860. While these don't name enslaved individuals, they only list ages and gender under the owner's names. They can help identify potential slave holders for ancestors who were freed after emancipation. Defective, dependent, and delinquent classes was done in 1880. These schedules documented individuals with illnesses, disabilities, or those in institutions like prisons or poorhouses. The American Indian schedules were done in 1880, 1900, and 1910. Special forms documented tribal affiliations, language usage, property ownership, and more. Now let me show you how these special schedules can bring your ancestors to life with a real example from my family tree. I recently discovered my ancestor, John Callanan, in the 1870 agricultural schedule for Middlefield, Otsego County, New York. This special schedule revealed a wealth of information. that the regular census could never provide. John owned 60 acres of improved land and 3 acres of woodland. The farm and buildings were valued at $3,000, which is equivalent to about $72,000 today. And his farming implements and machinery were worth another $100. His modest livestock included 1 horse, 6 milk cows, and 2 pigs, collectively valued at $550. In the previous year, his farm had produced 20 bushels of Indian corn, 150 bushels of barley, 15 bushels of buckwheat, 30 bushels of beans and peas, and 100 bushels of potatoes. He also harvested 15 tons of hay. The dairy operation on his farm had produced an impressive 1,000 pounds of butter, and his orchard yielded products valued at $25. His home manufacturers were valued at $370, and animals slaughtered or sold for slaughter brought in $145. The total value of all farm production was $985 that year. Okay, so what does that tell us beyond the bare facts that the typical census will tell us about John Callanan's life? Looking at these details, we can see that this was truly a family operation. The modest $25 he spent on wages throughout the year tells us that John and his family members did most of the work themselves, perhaps hiring extra hands only during busy harvest times. Though his 60-acre farm wasn't the largest in the neighborhood, it was certainly respectable. What jumps out immediately is his focus on dairy. Those 6 cows producing 1,000 pounds of butter represents an impressive output and shows us where the family's bread and butter literally comes from. Dairy wasn't just part of their farming strategy. It appears to have been the cornerstone of their livelihood. What's really fascinating is the $370 value of the home manufacturers. That's a substantial sum for that time. This tells us that John's household wasn't just about field work. Someone in the family, likely the women, was busy turning raw materials into valuable goods. Maybe they were turning out wheels of cheese from all that milk, sewing clothing, or crafting household items to sell at local markets. Despite having just 60 acres to work with, John didn't put all his eggs in one basket. He grew everything from barley to potatoes to peas, showing he knew the importance of not relying on just one crop. It's one thing to know from the regular census that your ancestor was a farmer. It's another thing entirely to be able to visualize their daily life. Walking among their apple trees, tending to their livestock, and bringing bags of grain to market. This is the kind of rich detail that only these special schedules can provide. Most of the 1890 census burned in a fire, leaving us with a frustrating 20-year gap between 1880 and 1900. It's like someone tore a chapter out of your family's story. Here's how to fill in those blanks. Look for the surviving fragments. Yes, some pieces survived the fire. Check the 1890 veteran schedule if your ancestors served in the Civil War. These survive for states alphabetically from Kentucky onward. Dig into city directories and tax records from about 1890. See if your ancestors' state did its own census around this time. Many did in 1885 or 1895. Census records often point you towards other records that can tell you even more about your family. If it says your ancestor owned land, go check land and property records. High personal estate values in the 1860 and 1870 censuses might mean there are probate records worth finding. Citizenship details can lead you to naturalization records and ship passenger lists. The 1910 census notes Civil War service, which might mean there are pension records waiting to be found. Details about your ancestor's job might lead you to employment records, union memberships, or trade publications. So to get the most from census records, look for each family member in every census taken during their lifetime. Make a chart comparing what each census says. The differences can be revealing. When you find conflicting information, follow up with other types of records. Use those special schedules that match your ancestor's situation. Think of census records as your research roadmap, not just a collection of facts. Census records might look simple at first glance, but they're packed with clues that can lead you to amazing discoveries about your family. With some clever searching strategies and an understanding of what's available beyond the basic population schedules, you can transform basic names and dates into rich stories about your ancestors' lives. Have you used any of these special schedules in your research? or found an ancestor who somehow got younger between censuses? I'd love to hear about your census discoveries in the comments. If you found this video helpful, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Need help with your family history? If you're feeling overwhelmed by those census records or just don't have the time to dig through those special schedules, Beyond Generations Genealogy is here to help. We specialize in professional genealogy research, creating beautiful family history books, and photo scanning and restoration services. Visit us at www.beyondgenerationsgenealogy to learn more about how we can help preserve your family's unique history for generations to come.